Good evening. Welcome to the December 1st, 2021 regular meeting of the Lynbrook Board of Education. If we could all please rise. Mr. Yaker will lead us in a salute to the flag. Roll call, or all are present except for Mrs. Hanson. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 10th, 2021's regular meeting? Mr. Pileski, second. Mr. Yaker. Mrs. Marcus was absent. Can I vote on that one? May I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 22nd special meeting? That would just be, all right, those are the four of us. So yes, so that one, only present at that meeting was Mrs. Danino, Murray, Mr. Pileski, myself. So Mr. Pileski, Mr. Murray, first and second. All in favor? Thank you. Being that this meeting is taking place sooner than our regularly scheduled meeting, there will be no art gallery tonight, but Dr. Burek has some additional comments.
Yes, for the month of December, though, the gallery will present works from Mrs. Ehrlich's, Mr. Kunz, Mr. Lentini, Mr. Senna, and Mrs. Turner's classes. They will showcase work in students from grades 9 through 12 and feature work from the introductory level courses such as studio art and digital design all the way up to the highest level course, portfolio prep. And the gallery will be redone for next week's concert, the beginning of the concert. So Tuesday evening is Waverly Park's concert, so as people are coming in for the concerts, feel free to go in and take a look at the show for the concert season.
Also, student presentations, Dr. Burek.
Yes, tonight I'm very pleased to recognize two girls. We always, and people who know me, know that I'm a big promoter of women in STEAM, STEM-related fields. So I'm very pleased and proud to present proud shirts, Lynbrook Pride shirts, to two of our students, Nora Kane and Carolyn LaRoe. They are doing a special challenge, and the name of their project is Using Microbiology to Clean Up Oceanic Oil Spills, How Bioremediation Can Be Used to Combat Oil Spills. And they did a whole website that contains all information, and it's a People's Choice Award, so to speak. So I tweeted it out, how to go and vote. We all get to vote to support them. At the last check, we were in first place with this. So if you haven't voted yet, if you don't know anything about it, if you simply Google Cast Your Vote, ESRI, if you do Google Cast Your Vote, ESRI, you can just create an account. It takes less than a minute, and vote for the girls, and let's try to bring it home and give these girls something to really, really be proud of, but we are already proud of you. So I'd like to recognize two girls, Nora and Caroline. We have until December 8th, correct, girls? Until December 8th to vote. So we're very proud of them. They were one of the top 10 internationally to get this far. So congratulations again.
Moving on to reports from trustees. Mr. Yaker, if you can address policies from the policy committee.
Yes, so tonight is the second reading of the adoption of the following policies. 0105, equity, inclusion, and diversity in education. 1230, public participation at board meetings. And 1500-E.1, use of district sport field and facilities.
Anything else from any of the trustees? Okay, at this time, moving on to old business. Last month, we heard from a few representatives from the Volunteer Fire Department in Lynbrook. We're going to open up a public hearing on the Volunteer Firefighters tax exemption. I'm going to close the meeting and open the public hearing with a motion, please, from Mr. Murray, second, Mr. Pileski. All in favor? And we'll open it for Dr. Lynch, if you could take over the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Belmont. Just so people will understand what's happening now, the board tonight is considering extending a property tax exemption to firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. In order to, the mechanism to have that happen is the district is responsible for presenting to the entire, since it has an impact on the entire community, we have to present in public hearing the impact that that would have on everyone. So that is the, the business that we are about now. So the background, which was very well said last month, so I think much of this, for those of you who are here already, will know that some of these facts. It is open to the primary residences of enrolled members of incorporated volunteer fire and ambulance companies who have been members for at least 5 years. That must be certified each year until the person reaches 20 years. It is also offered to the unremarried spouse of deceased volunteers who are already receiving the exemption or who have had the 20 years of active service. It is also open to the unremarried spouse of a volunteer who was killed in the line of duty. The benefit is equal to 10% of the assessed valuation of the property, and it is extended both to single-family homes and to co-op owners. So now, the next part is to assess the impact. So what I had the obligation to do is I went to the Nassau County Assessor's Office, and we pulled the properties that currently receive this exemption in other taxing jurisdictions. The County of Nassau, the town of Hempstead. The County of Nassau Assessor's Office gave me a list of those properties and then the assessed values of each of those properties, which enabled me to do some calculations. So on the tax rolls right now, there are 58 such properties for single-family households and 4 eligible cooperative units. So when I take the assessed value, and I took all those 58 properties, I added them up, took 58%, divided it by the number of the people who are eligible. The average savings, this is not going to mean, doesn't mean that every single person gets this. It's the average savings would be about $1,665 per exempt property. The average savings for the co-op property owner would be, based on the current tax rate, it would be $327.60. So now what happens? Those dollars that were previously being supported there come off the tax rolls and now get shared by everyone who is not a volunteer fire person or volunteer ambulance person. So the disclosure to the community is based on the current tax rate. When we do the math on what that would cost the rest of the folks in the community, the average cost to single-family homeowners based on the current tax rate would be $19.76. The average cost to other cooperative property owners based on the current rate would be $9.64. And then I went out to my counterparts in other districts who shared with me their tax exemption reports, and they told me who was also extending this benefit. And so Baldwin, Elmont, Hewlett, Malvern, Rockville Center, Valley Stream 24, 30, and West Hempstead. So that's what's considered my quadrant. Those are our local districts. And that is now, we're open to any questions from members of the board.
Dr. Lynch, out of curiosity, although we got extensive information last month, and I should point out that there was an extensive presentation made by representatives of the fire department last month that provided us with a great deal of information, much of which, if not all of which, looks like it's being reinforced in your presentation. Was there any commentary when you spoke to those other quadrant members, what the cost was in their school districts?
I'm sorry, I didn't do that. No.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Any other questions from any other members of the board? Well, I think as we indicated during our conversation on the information we received last week, I think it's a fair request at a fair cost, considering what benefits we get as a district, not just from the firefighting services, but we should also point out that the fire departments also become available to many of our community events. There's other things that extend outside the services too. So before we put this to any questions from anyone else? All right, before we take a vote on it, seeing the great opposition in the audience to this, is there any questions from anyone? Okay. So I would move. We don't really need to move. It won't be a motion, just a consensus. So I'm in support of this exemption. Show of hands. Do I need a motion, Jack? I don't need a motion, right? I have a motion to accept this exemption. Mr. Murray, second. Mr. Yeager, all in favor? Unanimously passed. Thank you. Like a motion, please. Motion to close the special hearing and go back to the board meeting. Mrs. Dino, second. Mr. Plesky, all in favor? All right, moving on with the board meeting. As we typically do, we can give 60 seconds for those who are, there we go. It's usually, was it something we said? In fact, it was something we said. Dr. Burek, moving on to, let me just clarify.
No, you have new business.
Yes. That resolution be 2112 G23. Also, we received a request from BOCES, has invited a member of the board to be on their budget review committee. The virtual meetings will be December 16th, January 13th, and January 27th. I know there'll be a big fight to try to get this position. To dispense with that, Mr. Murray, would you like to do that? Thank you for volunteering. Mr. Murray will represent us, Terry. And then Superintendent's report, Dr. Burek.
Sure. Before I turn it over to Dr. Belekas and Dr. Lynch, I just want to give you a preview. This Friday, my monthly bulletin will be coming out. And I ask that you take a look at the important reminder section. We have gone to a more digital path as far as submitting documentation and submitting payments with My School Bucks for different areas. And at this point, when we did an analysis, we run that tablet program. As everyone knows, every student in this district has a tablet. And it's an expensive tablet. It's approximately $600. And the only cost that we ask parents to do to protect yourselves, really, because if the tablet is stolen or if it's vandalized for some reason, the $27 cost of insurance covers that should it be stolen or vandalized for some reason. And we have about 50% of the district not paid up with that. So I just ask people if you can think back to see if you did it, didn't do it. I realized going digitally, we get bombarded by so many emails and different things like that maybe it just went by you and you forgot to do it. So I ask that you just take a look. The schools will be reaching out to you directly if you have not submitted your tablet insurance payment, as well as the acceptable use policy. Both of those were sent out at the same time. So I just want to put a plug in that, but it will be in my monthly bulletin, which will be coming out this Friday as well. And with that being said, I'm just going to turn it over to Dr. Belekas for the curriculum update.
Thank you, Dr. Burek. Over the past few years, we've been looking at opportunities for our high school students in science classes to participate in authentic science adventures and endeavors through partnerships with outside organizations. One that we started a few years ago was with the Liberty Science Center. Students from our anatomy and physiology classes actually have had the unique opportunity to peer into operating rooms and interact with the medical experts as they're conducting their surgeries through the Liberty Science Center's Live from Surgery program. This year, we actually added 2 new partners through our science research program, Cornell University and NASA. The Fish Tracker program, sponsored by Cornell, is a student-oriented citizen science project that helps record and map the presence of several species of fish, both endangered and invasive in New York State. During the first 2 weeks of November, teams of our 10th graders collected samples from 4 local areas and are looking forward to hearing back about the results of the environmental DNA analysis performed by the Cornell scientists. The NASA project, NASA's Growing Beyond Earth project, is a classroom-based citizen science project designed to advance NASA research on growing plants in space. It includes a series of plant experiments conducted by students in a Fairchild-designed plant habitat similar to a vegetable production system on the International Space Station. Our 9th grade students have been working on phase 1, actually up until today, to sustain 3 different varieties of radishes that were sent to us by NASA. Phase 2 will consist of the ninth grade students designing their own tests by carefully selecting a variable that may be of interest to astronauts on the International Space Station. The students are going to run one project here at Lynbrook High School, but up to 2 projects designed by students from across the United States will be simultaneously run on the International Space Station. We're going to find out if Lynbrook is chosen for this incredible opportunity sometime in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Lynch, capital projects?
So in the capital projects world, nothing much has changed in 2 weeks. So the high school is still pursuing the punch list. Marion Street, we're still hoping the elevator will be completed on or about February. The biggest change has been with the AA boiler, which has been in pretty good shape, and they're finishing that up. The big, if you were not here for last month, then the important thing that people should know is that the Facilities Committee reported out 2 major projects that they will be considering putting up for a separate proposition vote with the budget this year. The board had decided that there's such extensive property projects that they would like a more formal presentation. So at the January board meeting, we will be showing some preliminary designs for approximately $3.9 million worth of projects. If you were not here last month, I'll just tell you what those projects are. It would be a major project at Marion Street, which would involve the replacement of the carpet on the turf field, the installation of lights at the turf field, the remodeling of the playground at Marion Street, so to move the playground from Marion Street to the back of the building so that it would afford a little more safety and access to the building, and then a remodeling of the cafeteria. The remodeling of the cafeteria is important because it's an interior renovation that then makes the entire project aidable at 40%. Then the project at North that is under consideration is a turf field with lights and the remodeling of a classroom in order to, again, make the entire project aidable through state aid. So there will be a major presentation at the January meeting, and we invite all who are interested to see it before we present it at budget. I think that was the will of the board.
It was. Thank you, Dr. Lynch.
Thank you. And one final thing, and I apologize, I'm remiss if I do not mention this. Something that sends shivers down my spine is when you hear the news of the tragedy that took place in Michigan. There's probably no greater concern that a superintendent, administration, and staff alike to have such a tragedy take place in a school setting. Part of that digital push that we did also is that demographic update and the emergency contact update. We also only have about 50% of the parents who did that emergency contact update. So please, if you have not logged into PowerSchool, to check your demographic information, meaning if you changed a phone number, even if you didn't, if you don't think you changed anything, please log on and go into it just to make sure that all of the fields were carried over from last year to this year appropriately. And you may have changed an emergency contact. That information is so important to us, so please, parents, do that if you have not done that as of right now.
And also reinforce, Dr. Barrick, the fact that we have extensive training and drills. We have a security committee, our staff, from the principal down to our students, to support staff, to every member in our building understands what to do in those situations. They train for those situations. Hopefully we will never face that situation, but the district does do a good job of preparing for it, where there's always a possibility based upon what we're seeing. Thank you, Dr. Barrick. Anything else, Dr. Barrick?
That's it.
Anything else from the board? Moving on to public session, public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, now would be the time to come to the microphone. Please identify yourself and indicate whether you live in or out of district.
Good evening. My name is Steve Willen. I live in the resident of the district. Just want to thank the board for taking time to listen to input from the public without a clock being there. I think one of the things that's driven some of the animosity in some of the other districts or around the country is the signal that, all right, you got 1 minute, hurry it up, we're just going to dismiss what you say anyway, keep it moving, we should, kind of met our obligation.
With that in mind, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next.
I think more discussion is required to solve the problems, not less. I think the mass are a great inhibitor of discussion, which is why on day 625 of 15 days to slow the spread, I find their continued use to be grotesque. The medical practicality of masks has been highly questionable, yet we force children to wear them in school. No controlled studies have definitively shown any benefit to wearing the mask. It is accepted almost as an act of faith by politicians and bureaucrats in public health settings that they are absolutely essential to prevent viral transmission. To question this is akin to blasphemy, and the public at large has been silenced in their opposition to mask mandates in order to avoid being labeled as heretics in the new national religion of COVID avoidance. Despotism is established in the forced compliance of arbitrary rules. Yet examples abound of those who write the rules ignoring them with impunity, while demanding that children, again, wear them all day in school. Nancy Pelosi last month officiated a wedding at San Francisco City Hall of an heiress of the Getty oil fortune, maskless. To say this is hypocritical, I think, is missing the point. It's not hypocrisy at all anymore. It's a grand declaration that this is the new social order where the rules dictated from the upper crust of society do not apply to those that make them. If we sent the children to school in tuxedos and ball gowns and called it the Met Gala instead of school, they could be maskless. Masks promote a culture of fear. Masks are a constant reminder that we are in a state of emergency, even when no such emergency exists. Masks are tools of the politics of subjugation brought on by scaremongering. Masks create the perception that you are a threat to others, and others are a threat to you. Social distancing is anything but social in a society where increasingly words have little meaning. My 4-year-old is in pre-K, so obviously they have to follow the rules of the district. They didn't do a class picture, but they sent a kind of a collage of everyone's individual picture. His friend that he talks about every day in school, he couldn't identify which kid that was when we asked him, which one is your friend? He's never seen him without a mask on. My oldest son, who's in kindergarten, was walking around at, I don't know, some kind of store, and he saw a friend of his from kindergarten. He said hello to him. My son didn't have a mask on, but his friend didn't even recognize him. He's in school with him every single day. I think that's a problem. We've been conditioned to believe that it's a societal goal to avoid getting COVID at all costs, to the point where the governor now decides which medical procedures you're eligible to receive, depending on her assessment of the dangers from a variant that has not yet even been recorded in the state. All to ensure hospital capacity, diminished hospital capacity that was created by the firing of nurses and other staff that chose not to get vaccine. Increasingly, the role of government is to solve problems of their own creation. Our unelected government bureaucrats constantly remind us that they are following the science, and now Dr. Fauci insists that he represents science, him alone, I suppose. I brought with me, I can forward a copy, a PDF, or give you the link if you're so interested. This is from the CDC last month, Epidemiology of COVID-19 in children aged 5 to 11. On page 515 is the hospitalization numbers. Excuse me 1 second here. Mr. Belmont, were you aware that flu hospitalizations for 2017 and 2018 among 5-year-olds, between 5 and 11-year-olds, was significantly higher than at any point during the COVID pandemic for ages 5 to 11?
Is that a rhetorical question? You're looking to engage me in a conversation on that statistic?
Well, that's all right, if you prefer, yeah.
I'm aware of the different flows of how colds and flus and other diminishing factors took place during COVID and so forth. But continue with where
Well,
I
no,
think
so again, on slide 15 of this, the flu season for 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2019 to 2020. To this point, obviously this is a month old now, this data.
as is the fact about that variant now being in California. Not overly relevant, but just
Fair
to,
enough, but
just to update
well, the
presentation.
person who found it in South Africa also said that the symptoms appear to be mild. So I know it's the new name, and we're all supposed to get worked up over a new variant, even though there's been several in between Delta and now. I guess this is just a more intimidating name, but you know, neither here nor there. Yeah, great. So it's in California now. So anyhow, the flu for ages 5 to 11 for the last 3 flu seasons hospitalization rates have all exceeded what they have to this point for COVID among children 5 to 11. Now, I don't think that you were indifferent to the suffering of children in hospitals for the past 3 years. It's just we used to accept that there were some risks in living life, and we worked the best to mitigate those risks, understanding that we can't eliminate them entirely. So, now 5 and 11-year-olds are eligible for the vaccine. No judgment to any of those who choose to have their child vaccinated, but it is also not a fringe belief to be hesitant about having young children who, generally speaking, are not at severe risk for a bad outcome from this to begin with, for parents to be skeptical about giving to them, especially since natural immunity from prior infection has also been dismissed out of hand, and we constantly hear, well, we're not sure how long the natural immunity lasts. Well, we have no shortage of people that had this at the very beginning, and yet they never even say that, well, after analyzing X number of people from March or April of 2020, we found X percent in drop-off of, antibodies or whatever. So, anyhow, they say we don't know how long natural immunity lasts, but no mention ever made to analyzing those infected from the earliest days. And even now, just on Monday, the president said, we need to do more to vaccinate Americans. To beat the pandemic, we have to vaccinate the entire world. There are 7.8 billion people in the world, 385,000 new people born every single day. If we wait for the entire world to get vaccinated to get back to normal, it is never going to happen. And increasingly, I think that is the point of those who are giving these declarations. I don't know. I guess the question I'd like to ask is, at what point do we reassert local control over anything? We're constantly told that we're just listening to whatever the CDC says at the State Department of Health. At what point does this district have to get the number below a certain threshold where we say, listen, this is a geographically large state. A spike in Plattsburgh didn't equate any risk to children in Lynbrook.
So there's actually a question in there. So we have asked for specific numbers. As you know, it's not necessarily CDC. That may be the reference the governor's office makes and dictates what's going on. So as you may probably know, that they just extended the mask mandate for another 90 days under emergency protocols. So the masks are required for another 90 days. That stems from the State Department of Health and the governor's office until another agency decides to intervene, which they don't have the authority to because it's very autonomous. Pennsylvania last month decision that on January 17th, they were going to make masks optional in their state. We had asked the governor if we were going to have some possibility of that, but then since the new variant came out, that decision was made there. So while there's a lot of conversation that could be had and a lot of concerns, our masks are going to be on for the next 60 days, it's going to be on for another 90 days, for another 3 years. All that is things that we don't have. We have to still ask to have local control. We cannot dictate it. We cannot demand it. We are not in a position to take the consequences of what the consequences and repercussions would be by violating what the state's doing and what the state's decisions are. We have to follow those orders unless they give us room to make discretionary decisions.
Well, I mean, are we asking for the discretion to make the decisions?
We've constantly. If you've been to these meetings, we've asked for I've been on the board 15 years. The only thing we've ever asked for is local control to make those decisions ourselves.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I think the frustration lies in, we vote for you, not for Rochelle Walensky, not for Anthony Fauci, not for Mary Bassett, the state.
Well, you also vote for the governor, and the governor's the one who's making these decisions. So
fair enough, but I mean, we also elect the state legislature, and they don't.
That's correct. Also,
they don't even have comments about this anymore. It's just whatever she decides, I guess, right? Like in a state of 19.5 million people, she alone gets to make these decisions.
Well, the legislature plays a role also, but the current governor and the previous governor, I did call him governor, Mrs. Marcus, did not have any opposition from what they were going to do. So the legislature does have the ability to pass legislation that can alter mandates that comes from Albany, but none of that's taken place. But those are the two places where the most decision-making is done. But it's important to reiterate, as you brought up, is that we don't get to make those decisions. We are given boundaries we can work within, and when we're given those boundaries, we as a board debate those and we make decisions that work within that. But we're not giving any boundaries when it comes to much of what's happened throughout COVID and those protocols. And we have no discretion on those things.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I just think more's got to be done. I don't know if it's a coordination with other districts. I mean, I don't know. I just think this is getting a little ridiculous at this point. And I think too many people are content to just say, what's the big deal? What's another 21 months of making children wear masks in school for 6 hours a day. Thank you for your time.
All right. Appreciate the comments. In that there is no one else, we have one sympathy resolution tonight, Resolution 2112 G21. Whereas the members of the Board of Education of the Lynbrook Union Free School District have learned with sorrow of the passing of Rita Perlmutter, former teacher and library media specialist in the Lynbrook School District, and whereas Rita Perlmutter served as an employee of the Lynbrook Public Schools for 20 years, from 1973 through 1993, retiring from Marion Street School, and whereas the Board of Education is mindful of the contributions made to our district by Rita Perlmutter during her years of service to our community. Be it resolved that the Board of Education records its sorrow, its sympathy, and the esteem in which Rita Perlmutter was held. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the family of Rita Perlmutter with the hope that they will find solace and comfort in the rich heritage of good works for which she is remembered and revered. Also, we'll point out that under Resolution 2112 C4 this evening, there was a change in the class step beginning on January 3rd. This change will be reflected in the official record adopted tonight. I'd like to ask for consent agenda on Resolutions 2112 NC1 through 2112 NC4 and 2112 NC1 and 2112 G1 through 2112 G22. Mrs. Marcus, second. Mrs. Danino, all in favor? May I have a motion, please, to accept the consent agenda? Mr. Pileski, second. Mr. Murray, all in favor?
Nothing else.
So we will be adjourning that meeting. Everyone should have a happy and healthy and safe holidays. We will meet again in January.